In part one of this series of which country should I move to, Belize, Costa Rica, or Panama, I came up with a list of the non-negotiable items that my husband and I created when we were looking for a potential country to move to. And I'll link that video down below in case you didn't see it, because that's kind of the important one to watch first. And what I did was I went through and we both created a list of what are the criteria that we have to have in the country we're moving to. The non-negotiables. And of course, there's always incidentals, but there's things you can live with and there's things you can live without. These were things that we could not live without. They had to be there. And I also in that video gave some suggestions for other possible non-negotiables for other people, things that weren't non-negotiable for us, but important things that other people might be thinking about. So you could make your own list. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each country and I'm going to compare it against our non-negotiable list. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of those other non-negotiables maybe for other people. But I didn't put a ton of research into those, so I don't have a whole lot of information. You're going to have to research on your own if you have a non-negotiable that's not on our main list. So let me start by saying that, reminding people from the last video, we're not looking to retire. We're looking to not only work in our new country, but also start a business in our new country. And as far as working in the new country, my job is I'm an online educator. I own an online school that is basically US based. So that's like a foreign country when I'm living in a different country, right? That's then a foreign business. So I needed a country that would allow me to work at that foreign business and allow me to start a new business as well. So we aren't people who are retiring. So if you're retiring, some of this stuff may work for you, but then some of it may not. Take what you can and leave the rest. All right, so let's get into this, and we're going to start with Belize because Belize is where it all started. I have been in love with Belize longer than I've been in love with my husband because I went to Belize prior to meeting my husband, now Brian. And that was about 6 years ago. It was kind of a fluke. I just kind of picked Belize on a map. And really the reason I picked it is because it seems to be like kind of an exotic location that spoke English. That kind of was like my main thing because I was basically going by myself on this trip and I didn't want to have to struggle with the language. I do speak some Spanish, but you know, I was nervous because it was really my first time out of the country by myself. So I had planned to spend a week in the jungle in the Cayo district, interior of Belize, and then a week at the beach. Well, I got to Cayo district, San Ignacio is the town, and I literally fell in love with the jungle. I have now been to many jungles around the world in Central America and Southeast Asia, and there's something about the jungle that speaks to every cell in my body, and it's where I feel at home. And from that very first 2-week trip to Belize, I knew that the jungle was somewhere I wanted to be. Okay, so while I was there, I made some great friends. I went on adventures I had never gone on before, and there were things that happened on that trip that literally changed my life and how I look at the world. So it really was this life-changing kind of experience for me. But because, like I said in the last video, I make decisions from logic, not emotion, just because I was in love with the jungle in Belize did not necessarily mean that the jungle in Belize was the most logical decision. So I came home and I started researching Belize, looking into real estate and working there and getting residency and things like that. But while I was doing that, I did that, and then I actually made a second trip to Belize. And during that second trip, I drove the entire country, really doing like hardcore scouting type research. I went as far up north as Orange Walk and as far down south, like to that very last town. I can't remember what it is that you get on the south kind of Caribbean-ish side, and all the way again back to San Ignacio. The rental car guy said he had never seen so many miles put on a rental in 2 weeks. So I literally drove the country because I really wanted to be boots on the ground and know what I was getting into. So I come back from that trip and I start kind of compiling, getting ready to move to Belize, really. But then kind of circumstances and things changed a little bit. I met my husband, my soon-to-be husband, and we then took a trip to Panama. And during that trip, we spent time on the Pacific side, near David, so that's in northern Panama on the Pacific side, and spent time on the eastern Caribbean side as well. So that's the Bocas del Toro area. Fell in love with Bocas del Toro. Because when I had gone to the beach at Belize, that was at Ambergris Key, where San Pedro is, and there was no jungle there. So in my mind at that point, kind of, there wasn't a whole lot of beach meets jungle areas. It was either jungle or beach in Belize. But in Panama, in Bocas, there was jungle and there was beach. I mean, I could snorkel and go hiking and see amazing wildlife all in the same day. Okay, so then Panama got on the radar. And we actually talked to a lady there that owned some property and started thinking maybe this is a place we want to go. All right, so fast forward a little bit of several months later, went to Costa Rica to go check it out. And I lived on the Pacific side of Costa Rica, South Pacific, in Ojachal area. I lived there for about 2 months. And what I determined from visiting David and Ojachal area on the Pacific side was that while the jungle portions were beautiful and what I was looking for, sorry, there's construction and dogs and everything, I didn't really get the vibe off the beach as much. I don't enjoy the Pacific side as much. So spent that time in Costa Rica, came back, did a lot of more traveling, and then a few years later, my husband and I, we had been talking. We said we loved Bocas so much in Panama. Why don't we visit the Caribbean side of Costa Rica and see if that is a good option? So we did that just a couple years ago. We went to the Puerto Viejo area, and guess what? Fell in love with Punta Uva. Fell in love with Punta Uva to the point that we had planned to spend, because I had never spent time in central Costa Rica, so we had planned to spend time on the beach in Costa Rica and then go toward central Costa Rica, and we canceled the central part. We stayed the entire time in the Puerto Viejo area. That's how much we loved it. And in fact, we loved it so much, we started looking at properties. And in fact, we loved it so much that I was in a real estate agent's office with a pen in hand and a contract in front of me, ready to sign it. But something stopped me. Again, I'd fallen in love, but I don't make decisions out of emotion. I make them out of logic. And I felt that as much as I liked that piece of property in Punta Uva, that I hadn't done enough research. And so I put down the pen and I apologized and I said, I can't do this right now. I need to do more work. I'm so glad I did. Okay, so then we really start kind of cranking up the heat. We knew we were getting ready to sell our house in Los Angeles and we wanted to move out of the country, and that move was going to be to Central America. So we wanted to look at Panama a little harder. We had some experiences in Costa Rica, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, that turned us off a little bit as far as thinking that we wanted to live there and buy there. We'll go through those. So I went back to the Bocas area in January of 2020 and stayed there for 2 months looking at properties and found one and put down a deposit on that property in the first week of March. Second week of March, COVID. So now I'm just now getting back to Panama. It's the beginning of December now, right? But I'll do an entire video on purchasing real estate. That's not for this video. So now you have kind of the background of my boots on the ground type research that I was doing. So getting into these areas and really seeing what spoke to us, all right? Because that's really important when you're trying to decide where you want to live. Okay, so back to Belize. Let's go through the list of non-negotiables and see how Belize stacks up. So first up on our list was the ability to work and to start a business. Belize, I'm sorry, but you kind of get an F in this one. Again, I'm a teacher, so we're going to do report cards. All right. So in order to work in Belize, you have to have been there for at least 6 months before you can apply for a work permit. Okay, that's not so bad. But the problem is, Belize has this crazy rule where you, like my online school, even though it's not based in Belize at all, legally, I could not work that business until I had a work permit. Like you can't even volunteer legally in Belize. And I am here to tell you, I am not about skirting the system or doing things behind the government's back or on the down low. A lot of people do it. A lot of people get away with it. That's not me, and that's not what I'm interested in doing. So if I were to move to Belize, I would literally have to shut my school down for 6 months until I could get, well, more than that, because 6 months and then apply for the work permit. Okay? Then you have to apply every year to renew that work permit. Okay, so that would affect my online school business drastically. But remember, I also want to start a business in the new country. So the problem there is that tourism is the industry that I want to go into. In fact, the business we're planning on opening is an educational biodiversity center, and it is going to be kind of like a museum and lodging for tourists to come in and learn about the biodiversity of the jungle and the ocean. Couldn't do it because only Belizean citizens have access to the tourism industry. And you will find that in any country you go to, that there are certain jobs that are kind of set aside only for citizens. For example, like in Panama, some of the ones that are set aside are like the medical industry, being a lawyer, that kind of thing. So if you think that you're going to move your profession down to the new country, you better check that country's list and see if you're allowed to even do it there, because you might not be able to. Okay, so then that brings us to the next non-negotiable, which was we needed a country that had favorable taxation. Belize does not tax worldwide income, so I would not get taxed by Belize on the income that I made through my school, which that's a bonus. So they're good in that, because that was my main criteria. I didn't want to be taxed on my worldwide income. Third is safety. Oh, Belize. Oh, Belize. Okay, so when you look at the homicide rates per capita, per country, Belize ranks number 6. Okay? It's pretty high up there. I will tell you that when I was in Belize, I felt safe all of the time. In fact, one of my friends who's Belizean and from Belize City took me into Belize City. We went to a street party at night, and I was so welcomed and embraced, and it was a wonderful experience. I wouldn't do that by myself, but to be with someone and do that, yeah, it was great, and I felt safe the whole time. My friends in Cayo district in Belize were like, oh my God, Mary, what are you doing? You can't go into Belize City. So, you know, it's that situation. What really turned me off to Belize is, you know, when you're looking at homicide rates, you're generally looking at citizen on citizen crime, Belizean on Belizean crime. But yeah, the expat community has been hit pretty hard with some very intense, violent crimes. Expats have been murdered in their homes, and there's not just one instance of it. It's a serious situation. I do understand that in most countries in Central America, if you leave something out, there are crimes of opportunity. You leave an opportunity for someone to take something from you, there's a good chance it's not going to be there when you get back. Okay, that's just kind of the law of the land. But that's a different situation than someone coming in and murdering you for your things. It really turned me off on Belize, unfortunately. Okay, next list on the non-negotiables was the international airport. Belize City Airport, not an international hub at all. Affordable real estate. Okay, Belize, you got me there. There is some very affordable real estate in the area. So both in the jungle and in the beach area, depending upon where you're looking, you can find affordable real estate. Again, affordable is a comparative thing. I'm coming from Los Angeles. Pretty much anything's affordable, but I mean really affordable. Good stuff. I mean, look on their real estate sites. There's a lot of really nice listings, and even the rentals are cheap there as well. Ease of residency. Oh, Belize. You really get an F minus on this one. In order to establish residency in Belize, you have to be there 50 out of 52 weeks of the year, which means you can only leave Belize for 2 weeks. If you have an emergency in the United States and you have to go back for some reason and you're there for 15 days, guess what? Your residency starts all over again with week 1, and you've got to get to week 50 again. That's, I feel like, being held hostage. I'm not interested in that kind of a situation. Also, while you're working on that 50 weeks, every 30 days, you have to go and get your passport stamped and pay for that. That is called a pain in the Watusi, and I'm just not interested in dealing with that either. So ease of residency, no such thing in Belize. Stable economy, no. I mean, Belize just doesn't really have anything to speak of. Good infrastructure, not really. I mean, the roads, I would say, are comparable to the roads in Costa Rica. Lots of potholes, internet kind of spotty, depending upon where you are, so not really. All right, now, though, that's my list of non-negotiables, and as you can see, Belize kind of failed miserably in every area except affordable real estate and favorable taxes. Now let me go through a few of those things that I had mentioned in the last video. Cost of living, it's going to be about the same in all 3 of these countries, fairly close, all right, except for Costa Rica is going to be a lot higher. Again, it wasn't a huge concern of ours. Strong expat community, if you're looking for that in Belize, from my research, there were 3 major expat areas: Corozal, San Pedro, which is on Ambergris Key, that's the beach area, and Placencia, which is also the beach area but further down south. If I was looking to move there, there are only 2 places I'd live. Bullet Tree Falls, top of the list. If I couldn't live there, Hopkins, which is beach area but not as expat, because again, like I said, strong expat community is not my gig. Availability of products and services, yeah, pretty abysmal. There aren't like massive grocery stores there, really, especially in the rural areas like you see in Costa Rica or Panama. So getting things like that is a little bit more difficult. All right, so that sums up Belize. Okay, so now let's move into Costa Rica and see how Costa Rica ranks on our non-negotiables. So let's start with the ability to work and start a business. If you're working online, like in my school, no problem, because it's a foreign business from Costa Rica. So they will allow you to work without a work permit. So that's great. The problem comes in when you want to start a business. You can start a business without a work permit, but then you can't work in it. You can only hire Costa Rican citizens to work in your business. That's not what I want to do. I like to run and manage my own businesses, I mean, with the assistance of the locals, but I'm definitely very involved. You cannot do that if you don't have a work permit. Let me give you an example. You open a restaurant in Costa Rica. You don't need a work permit. You hire all locals, but one day you decide you're going to wipe down the tables or you're going to run the cash register. You are now illegally working without a work permit. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. And people have been reported for that and gotten all kinds of trouble. Don't skirt the laws. Okay, so like I said, in order to get a work permit, you have to be a permanent resident. And that's going to bring us into our next topic. For this one, I'm going to go into ease of residency real quick, kind of skip these other ones. In order to become a resident, a permanent resident, you first apply for temporary residency. And you have to be a temporary resident for 2 years. And then you apply for permanent residency. Like I said in the last video, I'm not interested in temporary residency for several reasons that are in that video. So that kind of took it out for me. So if you need a work permit, you're looking at over 2 years before you're able to get a work permit because you have to have that permanent residency first. Okay, so let's go back. Taxes. Taxes are getting out of control in Costa Rica. And I realized this when we were there and I started reading all of these articles about how they were getting ready to do a lot of taxation on Airbnb. And then I started looking further into that and saw that taxes across the board were being raised in the country because the government has a deficit and they're trying to make it up. And how do you make up deficits? Taxes, taxes, taxes. So I really wasn't interested in getting into a country where the tax situation could just change on a dime. And yeah, so taxes, Costa Rica kind of failed for me. Safety, Costa Rica passes. Again, it's that crimes of opportunity thing. You leave stuff out, people are going to take it. But as far as getting murdered in your home, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible anywhere, but it's not nearly like a common occurrence like it is in Belize or something like that. It's not something that I would super worry about. I will say, when you're in the cities in Costa Rica, you do see lots of barbed wire and that kind of thing that I didn't see when I was driving around Panama City, which I was kind of pleasantly surprised about that. But I felt safe when I was in Costa Rica. I didn't have any issues. International airport. Okay, so San Jose is better than Belize City, but that's still not saying a whole lot. San Jose really isn't what I would consider to be an international hub, although it is an international airport. Affordable real estate. Yeah. This is what really turned me off. So when we came back from that trip to Costa Rica where we were on the Caribbean side and we almost bought that piece of property, I really started doing more research into properties in Costa Rica and trying to really get a feel for the market there, because I kind of felt we were impulse buying when we were doing it that first 2 weeks, and I wanted to see more of what was out there. And here's what I found. That real estate market in Costa Rica, shady. I would find a property on one website and then find it on another website, the same exact property with the same exact description, but it would be like 30% more on another website. Because what they're doing is the real estate agents will take a listing, and then if they sell it for that higher price, then they're able to keep it, which makes trying to know that you're getting a good deal on real estate practically impossible. I just didn't like it. I didn't like the dealings. And then when you would call someone out on that, like if an agent would send you a property and then you had already found it on another site for like $30,000 cheaper, and you call them on it and say, hey, what about this? They would get upset. I'm not interested in doing business that way. So it really spoiled me on the Costa Rican real estate market, and it just wasn't something I wanted to get into. Let's see, we already did ease of residency. So next up is stable economy. Costa Rica's economy is kind of swirling around the drain right now. There's a lot of research you can do online about this, but to call that economy stable, it's nowhere near it. And that's even before COVID. So after COVID, it's just going to get worse. Lots of loans with China that they're going to have to pay back, which again is going to feed into the whole taxation system. That economy makes me very nervous. Infrastructure, decent for Central America. You know, potholes, absolutely. But I mean, when we've been there's been a lot of construction going on. So, you know, that's the story there. Okay, so now some of these other things. Cost of living, again, which didn't really apply to us because we're coming from Los Angeles with the same basic income. But here's what a lot of people don't understand. Costa Rica has the highest cost of living in Central America. Highest. Let me repeat that. Highest. It's more expensive to live in Costa Rica than any other Central American country. I mean, why do I want to spend more and then not have things like ease of residency and not have a stable economy and not have affordable real estate and have taxation kind of out of control and my ability to work and start a business not be that great? I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. Let's see, strong expat community. Yeah, I don't think you could pick up a rock and throw it and not hit an expat. Let's just say that. There are expat communities no matter where in the country you want to live, because there's lots of different climates. If you want to be at the Pacific beaches or the Caribbean beaches or the mountains or the valleys, you'll find an expat community. Don't worry about that. Availability of products and services, pretty good. Okay, pretty good. I mean, you're not going to find everything you want, but overall, decent. Okay, now we get to Panama, which is where I'm sitting right now. So you know my choice. So let's go through Panama's list and see how it ticked everything off. All right, so the ability to work and start a business. Zero problem working here in my online school, which is based in the US. I don't have to worry about any Panamanian taxes. Starting a business, easy as pie. So same thing as Costa Rica, you have to have your permanent residency before you can apply for a work permit, but it only takes about 1 to 3 months after you've applied for your, or after you've received your permanent residency status for you to get that work permit. Okay. One thing I do want to point out is that I know in Panama and I know in Costa Rica, I'm not sure about Belize, I'm pretty sure there too. If you are coming in on a retirement visa, you're not going to be able to work, period. So get that out of your head. You have to come in on a different visa, not retirement. So, so the ability to work and start a business, awesome. And I can start a business in tourism. Okay. So now let's kind of do what we did before. Let's skip down to the ease of residency portion of the program. Easiest of the 3 countries by far. From the time you start collecting your documents in the United States till you get to Panama and you apply for your permanent residency, you should have it within about 6 months. That's the Friendly Nations visa that I'm coming under. So the information I'm giving you is for Friendly Nations. And so then within that 6 months, then you apply for your work permit. You'll have that. Takes about 1 to 3 months. So you can say that at the most, you're looking at 9 months before you can get a work permit. Again, you can work online if you have your own business. I can still run my school, no problem. I just can't really start a business and work in it here until 9 months in, which is fine because I won't be ready until then anyway. Okay, taxes. Panama, you steal my heart at your taxation system. One of the most favorable tax structures, period. I'm going to do a video just on taxation, but after I pay all my taxes, so like in 2021 or something, or 2022, I'll do a video of like how my 2021 taxes were affected living in Panama. You'll see. Safety. Again, crimes of opportunity. That's going to happen. Like our property has been abandoned for 7 years, so people have come in and stolen the toilets and the sinks and the light fixtures and anything they could get their hands on that wasn't bolted down or was bolted down. That's typical, but the chances of someone coming in and murdering you in your home, fairly small. It happens, but it happens everywhere. So safety, I feel safe here. International airport. Oh yeah! All right, Tocumen Airport, we're looking at you. Major hub for all of South America. Or all of Latin America, actually. So Copa Airlines is based at Tocumen Airport here, PTY, and you can get to anywhere easily. Beautiful. All right, so far we've checked off everything. Affordable real estate. Yes and no. I will tell you, we found a great deal. And I'll be talking about that in a future video about buying real estate here. If you look around, there are deals to be had, and especially in the post-COVID world. I guess we're in the current COVID world right now, but you know, post-COVID, you're going to be able to find good deals too. And my experience with the real estate situation here has been nothing but absolute positivity. Again, I'll talk about that in another video. Ease of residency, we already talked about. Friendly Nations visa, probably one of the easiest residencies to get in the entire world. So go Panama. However, I will say they are considering changes to the Friendly Nations visa. So you're going to want to make your move as soon as possible before those changes come, because we don't really know what those changes are going to be. Again, I'll do a video on that later. Stable economy. Panama, believe it or not, has been one of the fastest growing economies in the world over the past couple of decades. Of course, then COVID. But why is this? One major reason is the Panama Canal brings in a lot of money, and it really boosts this economy and stabilizes it. So it makes me very comfortable being here, knowing that I'm in a country that has something that the world depends on, that canal. Infrastructure, get on the rural roads, you can run into a pothole. Get on that Pan American. Oh man, that is a road. When we were driving from Panama City to Bocas, or I guess up to David, along the Pan American, it was just an absolute pleasure to drive on. The city has these 2 major toll kind of corridors. Corridor, I guess it's Norte and Sur, and those toll roads are amazing and fantastic. I mean, just lovely. Let's see, then we'll get into the things that weren't on my non-negotiable list but might be on yours. Cost of living, cheaper than Costa Rica, depending on where you are. it's obviously more expensive here in the city than it is in some of the rural areas. So just keep that in mind. Strong expat community. I would say there's not as many expat communities in Panama as there are in Costa Rica, but that are really strong ones. Probably the top three are Panama City, Boquete, which is a super popular place, and then the Coronado area, which is like the Pacific beaches kind of side. Those are the main like expat enclaves that you might want to get into. Availability of products and services. Again, I've been able to find everything that I needed in Panama City. We actually took several days trying to go to lots of stores because we know the things that we need for our property, and we were trying to figure out what do we need to ship over and what can we get here. We can pretty much get everything we need here except Diet Dr. Pepper, which I talked about in the last video. Okay, so that's kind of the roundup. I know this is a little long, I apologize for that, but I think it's worth doing your research before you make some big move like this, and make sure that the country that you want is the country that's going to work for you and your personal situation. Again, I'm not saying Panama is the best for everyone's situation. It ticks all of the boxes on our non-negotiable list, so that's why we chose it here. I mean, the bottom line was we just wanted some jungle and some oceanfront, and we preferred the Caribbean side. So where are we going to be? Well, look at those three countries. They all have jungle and Caribbean oceanfront. Which one has everything else? So you kind of have to go through your own list, do your research. I highly recommend you get on some of the expat boards that are in Facebook groups. So if you go into Facebook and you just search for your country and then you hit groups, or search like your country and expat, so like Costa Rica expat or whatever, hit the groups button and then all those groups will come up. Join and talk to people who are living the life before you decide to make your move. And you're going to get some great information. It's been such a resource for me these past several years. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you some food for thought and taught you a few things. And coming up, we're going to have videos on purchasing real estate here, purchasing a vehicle here. I mean, everything from here on out is all going to be all Panama all the time. So everything that we're experiencing as new expats, I'm going to do a video on it and kind of walk you through it so you know what to expect when you get here, if you decide to come here. All right, well, thank you so much, and see you on the next video.